Bret Hart told the Outsiders to stay out of his business in what would be the start of the long-term storyline payoff over the next month, continuing as Sid attacked Bret with Hall and Nash coming out to join and subtly stop him. After writing off Hogan savaging Flair in the last 2 weeks, Goldberg and Page will also miss tonight's show with them in LA shooting scenes for the upcoming Ready to Rumble movie. Meanwhile, both Hogan and Flair updated on their status with the company during the week, with Hogan doing several media interviews half in character continuing to work the angle saying that the new writers said that they didn't have anything for him creatively, while Flair did an out-of-character interview talking about the product improvements since the new regime took over, while mentioning that as of now the word he got was him returning to TV in January. The Outsiders were backstage throughout the first hour with Nash telling Hall that he can be his promoter, starting a mystery makeover with a hint of a familiar laugh over the next 30 minutes to be revealed at 9 p.m. WCW aired an interview with Scott Steiner talking about his recovery after undergoing back surgery last week. The interview, which was done completely out of character, saw Steiner explaining the severity of his injury, which bothered him in the last 2 years, made worse when the brace put in his shoulder caused him to lean to the left and re-aggravate his back injury, forcing him to go through the surgery with 8 to 10 weeks of therapy ahead of him. Steiner's last match was on May 9 at the Slamboree pay-per-view, with his future as a full-time wrestler going forward still in question. Nash came out at 9:05 for the makeover reveal, with the laugh giving it away earlier, coming out in a suit wig and mask in a Vince McMahon parody. Nash went over several Vince sayings and mannerisms, saying that he single-handedly built sports entertainment, and unlike billionaire Ted, he didn't buy his way to the top because he borrowed the money, referring to Vince suddenly positioning himself as the underdog after putting every other promoter out of business. Nash then did a spoof on Steve Austin, introducing Scott Hall as the trouser snake and roughest SOB in WCW, while saying that someday he will work against Jeff Jarrett in reference to the cancelled Austin feud, and that he will continue to push him as a babyface until fans regurgitate him, with Hall coming out saying that he ain't burning the bridge up north before mocking Vince's clothes. The opening segment, doing a 3.2 quarter, was also WCW's peak rating of the night. Rock opened draw to a huge ovation from the Washington crowd, with the sold-out NCI Center covered in Rock lexicon from top to bottom. Coming out to hype Survivor Series and his match with Road Dogg coming up in a rare Rock match in the first hour. What on the surface looked like a routine pay-per-view hype promo, created some buzz backstage due to Rock's 2 of the 3 targets in the promo being Austin and Road Dogg. As the promo comes with Rock and Road Dogg having legit heat, with them trading shots and media interviews over the last few months, with Road Dogg saying that success got to his head and Rock responding calling him an insecure loudmouth, showing his jealousy. The other more talked about point was Austin's name being mentioned by Rock as a heel target alongside Triple H, leading to him getting a mixed reaction from the crowd, with Rock then continuing saying that he's gonna tie the rattlesnake up in a knot, which got another big babyface pop, reportedly escalating the competitive real-life Austin-Rock dynamic, which saw Rock getting the bigger babyface reactions during their recent interactions, with a fired-up Austin set to respond to the promo later in the show. Rock and Road Dogg went a minute before DX's interference. WCW had Curt Hennig with Father Larry in the front row versus Disco next, with the constant stipulation of Hennig must retire the next time he gets pinned in a match, with Nash backstage continuing the Vince parody in a series of comedy backstage skits throughout the show, making several inside references about McMahon's dealing with talent and being one of the boys, while spoofing his "get it" saying from the WWF Attitude Super Bowl commercial in January. Raw jumped around 700,000 viewers to a 6.1 rating in the second quarter as the Big Show vs. Bossman feud continued to get wilder by the week after Show trapped Bossman and Albert in a car and smashed it with a dumpster Thursday on SmackDown, leading to a follow-up segment tonight with Bossman and Albert locking Show in a room with tear gas, along with an 8-man tag of 4 of the top tag teams in the company going 6 minutes. With Vince Russo mentioning constantly that he's not going to be an on-air character. In an interview on the WCW website 3 days ago, he talked about possibly doing a Seinfeld-type angle with him only heard on TV, with the camera shooting from the back to further advance the powers that be storyline. The concept was implemented with Jim Duggan asking for a spot on the show after his recent struggles, with Russo telling him that he only cares about the ratings and brushing him off to put heat on him as a heel. Raw's peak quarter of the night was next for the follow-up of the Bossman Show angle, along with a Mankind and Al Snow vs. Bossman and Albert tag match doing a 6.2 rating, ending up with Val burning up copies of Foley's book Have a Nice Day, coming after the book debuted this week at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Vince McMahon continued to lead the TV writing team for the Raw and SmackDown scripts during the week, with Terry Taylor still not back after refusing to sign the no-compete clause in the new contracts offered by the company following the Russo-Ferrara jump, with talk continuing on him potentially jumping back to WCW if the deal in the top creative role is not reached with McMahon. After building the entire network on the show, SmackDown continues to trend upwards, with the show breaking all network records in the past few weeks, drawing some of the biggest numbers on television in the young adult and teen demos, doing a huge 10.2 rating, with the show overall averaging over 7.1 million viewers, the highest in UPN history. Next was Eddie Guerrero vs. Perry Saturn in a key on a pole match, with Tori in a shark cage and both Filthy Animals and Revolution groups at ringside, going 6 minutes with Eddie jumping to get the key, going against Chyna, cutting a promo on Jericho, and a match with Stevie Richards. Steve Austin came out to a big reaction to open Raw's second hour for the upcoming match with Billy Gunn, bumping Raw 600,000 viewers, taking the microphone for his response to Rock's promo earlier. Austin cut a heated promo on Rock, saying that Rock wouldn't be saying what he did to Austin's face, leading to a rare situation of the crowd going dead on Austin during the promo, with both crossing the line of work and shoot in their promos due to the real-life competition over the top spot in the industry, along with the intrigue of the audience reaction during house show appearances and televised events. The stage is set for the road to WrestleMania 2000 on April 1st to lead to peak business creatively and financially, with talk of an inevitable Austin heel turn getting stronger by the week, and said to happen in the next few months to counter cemented top babyface Rock on the way to what is targeted to be the biggest matchup. WCW had Jarrett vs. Booker, with Jarrett going over to advance, while Raw had Val vs. Test going 5 minutes, along with a tease of a Kane X-Pac match after Waltman turned heel to join DX. Post-match saw Stephanie saying that she got her memory back and is gonna break from tradition, proposing to Test, who agreed to set the wedding back on. With weddings mysteriously one of the most consistent drawing concepts on wrestling TV, the company is already targeting huge viewership for the eventual wedding ceremony segment. Bill Goldberg's only appearance on the night was a taped interview from earlier in the day in LA from the set of the Ready to Rumble movie, saying that he's going to take the outsiders out of the business and what he did to see that Havoc will be nothing compared to what happens to him the next time they get in the ring. Kurt Angle's first vignette aired going through all his athletic accomplishments in life up until now, saying that the WWF is the next level, hyping him as the most celebrated real athlete in company history 2 weeks from his official debut. The McMahons and DX continued to fight backstage until Kane attacked, leading to Shane taking down Triple H after getting in Vince's face to set up Shane vs. Hunter for the title in the main event. Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko went 4 minutes with Benoit going over after a spectacular diving headbutt from the top of the cage, bringing out the filthy animals and Revolution for the post-match brawl until David Flair attacked with the crowbar. Flair then went to leave the building before being ran over by Kimberly, in a skit that might have been watched and raised some ideas at Titan Towers for the next 2 weeks. Hall and Seed agreed that Hall is gonna lay down for him with a finger poke until Nash was attacked backstage, leading to Hall double-crossing Seed to start the match. Vince McMahon was out first in the Raw main event, introducing Steve Austin as the guest color commentator, Kane as the guest enforcer and Rock as the special timekeeper, with JR and King building it up as a Montreal '97 scenario. WCW had a shorter than usual overrun going 3 minutes past 11, with Scott Hall going over Seed after Bret Hart's interference, building up the turn with Hart and the Outsiders helping each other in back-to-back weeks. Austin continued to go off on Rock's tying the rattlesnake in a nut promo, before Rock and Austin took out the Outlaws with Shane almost having the title won, including him taking 2 legit shots to the head during the match, almost knocking him out from Hunter's knee and Waltman's kick, ending up with Vince accidentally hitting Shane with the belt for the finish. The Shane vs. Triple H title match with McMahon, Rock, Austin and DX all out at ringside, gained over 900,000 viewers to peak the night with a 6.5 rating. After weeks of back-and-forth talk with the head writer position in the company still vacated, Terry Taylor not only didn't sign the no-compete contract offered to every employee as the new policy, but notified McMahon on his decision to jump back last Wednesday, signing with WCW a day later in a producer role. WCW started with a Seed Outsiders Bret and Goldberg confrontation to set up multiple matches for tonight, with the main event being a 4-way ladder match for the US belt, along with Goldberg vs. Sting in a Havoc rematch promoted to start at the top of the hour, with the tournament continues heading into the Mayhem pay-per-view, as well as setting up Goldberg vs. Seed in an I Quit match for the show. With the Russo-Ferrara regime now almost a month in, the move which got unprecedented media coverage for the position in the industry. continued this week in probably the highest profile piece yet, with Russo's jump being covered in a full-page story on Entertainment Weekly, talking about Russo's role in the WWF's turnaround over the last 2 years in addition to the increase in ratings for WCW since taking over the writing of the product, with Russo mentioning the workload as a reason for leaving in addition to the big challenge of turning WCW around, with Russo also offered by Fox Network to write a TV series on the behind-the-scenes process of the wrestling business. Now 4 shows into the job, Russo and Ferrara took things up a notch on November 8 with the formatting of the show, with the program moving at rapid pace and often having multiple segments per quarter, with several show-long angles happening throughout, with David Flair stalking Kimberly, Luger turning on Sting and Goldberg taking out Cena and the Outsiders. Seconds after 9, with the Goldberg-Sting match promoted to start, an unknown figure revealed to be Dustin Rhodes was floating to the ring in the previously planned 7 character, coming just a few days after Father Dusty left the company, with Dustin set to play off the news in the segment, cutting a work-shoot promo on management, saying that he left the WWF because of these gimmicks and that Goldust nearly ruined his career. Dustin talked about Dusty no longer being in the company after 25 years of building it, telling the powers that be in TNT that he's done with gimmicks and they will have to deal with Dustin Rhodes from now on. Goldberg and Sting was next in a short match, with Goldberg going over after Luger's interference, with WCW opening with a 3.2 rating head-to-head. Steve Austin open draw, calling out Vince after hitting him with the belt on Thursday, teasing a Vince heel turn heading into Survivor Series. Vince said that it was an accident, with Austin not convinced, with McMahon to prove it putting himself as the special guest referee in the Survivor Series main event. In the meantime, 6 days from the pay-per-view, Austin was taken off all his house show appearances during the week, with the company announcing an unknown injury as the reason in the buildings, along with him not doing anything physical on both Raw and SmackDown, leading to speculation on his condition and the severity of the injury going forward. Rock came out to question Vince and hype the match, including Vince having microphone problems with Austin throwing them up the entrance ramp. After the McMahon parody last week, Nash continued as Scott Hall's promoter, this time as the Grand Wizard, with the Luger and Flair angles continuing, along with Bagwell advancing against Vampiro. One of the most talked about stories of the week saw Walmart stores across the country removing Al Snow's action figure from the shelves, after getting some clueless complaints on the doll promoting violence against women due to the separated head figure coming with it. The company responded saying that it was Snow's TV gimmick and has nothing to do with the complaints, along with mocking and turning it into an angle on Raw, with the Outlaws accusing Snow of the abuse before their tag match, with King and JR burying Walmart throughout the show, while mentioning that the Snow's doll sales skyrocketed since the decision, with all the talk around it during the week. Mankind and Snow vs. Billy Gunn and Road Dogg went 4 minutes, with the Outlaws winning the tag belts. WCW jumped over 500,000 viewers back to a 3.2 rating for Bret Hart vs Perry Saturn, going 5 minutes, with Bret going over to advance to the semi-finals next week, with him as a leading contender for winning the belt, with the show taking place in Toronto's Air Canada Centre in front of what is expected to be a hot hometown crowd. Nash and Hall were backstage, with Nash reading a card that said 316, saying that it was the number of times Austin and Undertaker worked on pay-per-view. A good guess for the line can be seen with Russo repeatedly mentioning in interviews since leaving the company that Austin was being difficult to work with, and only wanting to work with a select few performers on the roster. Another key note from Russo's Entertainment Weekly interview was him answering a question on the future of Hogan and Flair in the company, saying that there's a role for them but it's not in the main event. In addition to the Nitro's change back to 2 hours was all but confirmed, with Russo pushing it to be from 9 to 11 head-up with Raw, along with Thunder moving nights to Wednesday after going head-up with SmackDown in the last 2 months. After setting up the segment last week, the Test and Stephanie wedding ceremony segment was officially announced for November 29 from the LA Staples Center, targeting a huge number for the show with 3 weeks to hype it. Raw had a 10-bell salute after the announcement that Big Show's father has passed away, leading to Bossman interrupting it and reading a card with a vicious tribute, putting strong heat to see Show's response heading into Sunday, with the company also setting up an angle announcing that footage from the funeral will be shown on SmackDown. Kurt Angle's debut match was officially announced in 6 days, while also mentioning the intensity, integrity, intelligence saying for the first time. WCW started the third hour with Luger vs Seat, ending up with Goldberg spearing both, along with a Bigelow vs Knobbs hardcore match. Some talked about issues predicted even before the first show of the new regime started to surface with Turner's standards and practices, as despite bumping the show rating to TV-14, reportedly having issues with aspects of the product, with several things mentioned being the Outsiders vs Strippers comedy match on October 25. The Lenny and Lodi characters, Dustin Rhodes window skits, as well as Seat and Flair both doing major blade jobs on the Havoc pay-per-view. With Russo and Ferrara having to work around the restrictions and going over the TV scripts with network representatives before going on the air. Raw jumped big at the top of the hour for the Rock vs X-Pac match, gaining over 1.3 million viewers to peak the night with a 6.1 rating. The company showed Rock's photo shoot with him set to feature in People's Magazine, in addition to officially announcing his autobiography set to be released in January, coming after Foley's book climbed to number 2 in the bestsellers charts during the week. Rock and X-Pac went 6 minutes with Rock going over, bringing out DX for the post-match, with Vince setting up Hunter vs Test for the title tonight, ending up with Rock laying him out to close the quarter. Scott Hall and Grand Wizard promoter Nash came out for Hall's quarter-final match, bumping WCW around 800,000 viewers back to a 3 rating, going 6 minutes with Lash LaRue. Along with the post-match segment with Goldberg revealed as one of the security to spear them both again. With all 4 of both companies' main TV programs going head-to-head on Mondays and Thursdays, new competition started on which night will become the most watched night of the week. With strong competition on Mondays in the fall season, Thursday saw SmackDown and Thunder drawing a combined audience of over 10 million viewers, equaling Monday's viewership for the week, with SmackDown remaining at record levels drawing over 7 million of the viewers. This Thursday is set to go even further, with the company announcing a major crossover appearance for the show, with Arnold Schwarzenegger set to appear. With the show being the final build before the pay-per-view along with the Arnold appearance, SmackDown is expected to break all records in 3 days. Raw jumped over 700,000 viewers between 10:30 to 45, with Bossman vs. Kane and the Hollies vs. Too Cool both going 3 minutes, along with the Acolytes in the local bar in State College, Pennsylvania, while WCW had Curt Hennig vs. Jeff Jarrett going 5 minutes, with Jarrett advancing after Creative Control's interference and Hennig staying in business. WCW's final quarter, featuring Kimberly calling out David Flair after the show-long build, ending up with him smashing her car, along with a four-way ladder match, picked up over 900,000 viewers to WCW's peak of the night 3.3 rating. Nash was revealed as the special referee, taking the belt off Bret, with Hall going over to win the title, with WCW overall doing a 3.3 rating. The Acolytes had another great bar brawl, this time with two people sitting at a close table saying how they're not legit, leading to them bumping them all over the place while smashing the bar, with their last brawl segment reportedly doing around $6,000 in damages to the place. Raw's Triple H vs. Test main event, built as a Montreal 97 scenario with Vince out as the special guest timekeeper and Shane as special referee, dropped to a 5 rating for the first half of the match, the lowest final quarter rating in almost a year, with a direct turnover of viewers against the Flair-Page segment in the Big Star Power 4-way match, as Nitro picked up around 900,000 viewers while Raw dropped around the same number. WCW surprisingly didn't go over this week and ended exactly at 11, giving Raw almost 7 minutes unopposed in the overrun for the second half of the main event, picking up almost half of the WCW audience to a 6.7 rating, ending up with Test, Vince and Shane all running backstage after Road Dogg showed them kidnapping Stephanie, ending in a cliffhanger to head into the big SmackDown on Thursday for the Survivor Series go-home show. On the 5th Nitro show of the Russo-Ferrari regime, with Russo's push to shorten Nitro back to 2 hours officially set for the start of next year, along with Thunder moving nights to Wednesdays also starting in January to get away from SmackDown, Russo as the unseen authority figure was getting more involved in on-screen angles, playing off his perceived real-life persona, with drawing ratings as the first priority, forcing Kimberly to wrestle her first match in the ring and Tori Wilson to referee the match in a bikini, along with 4 tournament matches 6 days from the Mayhem pay-per-view. Hall and Nash were out early in the second quarter of the unopposed hour, with Nash after the last 2 weeks of impersonating Vince McMahon and the Grand Wizard, coming out with a seed mask mocking his promos before bringing him out, challenging Nash to come out of retirement to set up Seed vs Nash in the main event in Nash's first match back since the Road Wild pay-per-view against Hogan. With the Steve Austin car attack angle and future career the big intrigue coming into Monday, one of the big talking points in the business coming out of it took place on Nitro at around 8:45 p.m., with co-head writer Ed Ferrara arriving to the building unannounced along with Steve Williams and a comedic JR parody, mocking Raw's commentary soundbites along with his Bell's palsy and hyping Steve Williams in reference to JR relentlessly pushing Williams when signing with the WWF specifically during the Brawl for All tournament. The character, which now got the name Oklahoma, was a remake of the same character which debuted earlier in the year in the WWF in an angle with a heel JR trying to get his job back, ending the segment with Williams taking out all participants in a piñata on a pole match. WCW went with a different strategy to hold viewers on the night by announcing the top 3 matches to start at the top of each hour, with Hall vs Benoit and Nash vs Seed set for 10 and 11 p.m. Bill Goldberg vs Curt Hennig was placed in the crossover segment at 9 p.m., starting 2 minutes before, with Hennig trying to attack Goldberg during his entrance to lead to a backstage brawl on the way to the ring, with the stipulation of the match continuing the angle with Hennig getting fired by the new regime the first time he's pinned, being put up against Goldberg to ensure him losing, with Goldberg instead going over by submission to start Nitro with a 3.3 rating, which would also be the peak of the night. With the top storyline direction changing after last night with questions about Steve Austin ever working a full-time schedule again, DX opened Raw for the follow-up segment after Vince cost Triple H the title, saying that a crime was committed last night, not referring to Austin getting run over but to Vince stealing the belt from him, calling out Vince with him starting the investigation with DX as the main suspects, while showing the footage of the Austin angle to the bigger TV audience before bringing out the cops to open Raw with its biggest audience in over a month 5.9 rating. With the Russo-Ferrara regime now 5 weeks in after starting on October 18 through this night on November 15, the rating calculations over the first 5-week period saw Nitro averaging a 3 rating during the head-to-head hours against Raw, while Raw did 5.7 rating, comparing it to the previous 5 weeks with the final weeks of Russo in the WWF along with the WCW transition. Raw averaged a 6.2 rating compared to Nitro's 2.4, meaning since Russo's first show Nitro was able to convert half a rating point margin of usual Raw viewers to sample the WCW product. After the first quarter, which ended up being the closest margin of the night, Raw pulled ahead from 9:15 on, with Mankind vs Val Venis bumping Raw over 600,000 viewers to a 6.3 rating, going 5 minutes with Foley going over, along with the start of the investigation with the cops questioning DX after Triple H was the one who lured Austin into the parking lot with him trying to shift the blame to McMahon, and Billy Gunn being the only one who wasn't seen in the building. while Nitro stayed steady at a 2.8 rating for the follow-up of the Rick Steiner injury angle along with a Flynn vs. Barbarian street fight. Raw shot up over 600,000 viewers as after making his debut last night, circumstantially or not on his first ever Raw show, Kurt Angle was involved in the highest rated quarter of the night, going 3 minutes against Godfather on his TV debut, coming in perfect timing in front of a sold-out crowd in his hometown with over 13,000 in Pittsburgh, bumping Raw to a 6.7 rating in a quarter that also included Vince McMahon being questioned by the cops based on his history with Austin, and a Jericho vs. Gangrel match with Chyna mocking Jericho throughout after beating him in last night's pay-per-view match. Nitro had the biggest viewership spike of the night, coming between 9:45 to 10 p.m., featuring a loaded quarter first with Russo's promoted ratings ploy of Tori in a bikini as a referee working to bump the show over 500,000 viewers, ending with David Flair interfering to go after Kimberly 6 days from their pay-per-view match, along with the first half of Scott Hall vs. Chris Benoit with Nash and Brett on each side of the ring, jumping back into the 3 rating range with the second highest rated segment of the night 3.2 rating after the first quarter. While that was going on, Raw had the finish of the Jericho match, and like Nitro had 20 minutes earlier, the rest of the quarter took place completely outside the arena in a series of segments backstage and in the parking lot, featuring Big Show asking Vince to give him Bossman instead of Bulldog and Vince announcing the rest of the card for tonight, and mainly an Acolytes backstage brawl after 4 people they beat up in a bar arrived to call them out, ending the first head-to-head hour with a 6.1 to 3.2 rating margin. As advertised earlier, Hall vs. Benoit crossed over the top of the hour for the finish of the match, which saw Seed interfering to lay out Hall in the build to the Nash match in the main event and set up Benoit going over, along with constant reminders that Goldberg didn't leave the building as a hook to hold viewers in the third hour, saving all 4 tournament matches for the final hour, with the second one coming in the same quarter with the first half of Kidman vs. Brett. After replacing Austin on the spot while the pay-per-view was already going on to start his first title run in the company, new WWF champion Big Show opened Raw's second hour defending the belt for the first time in a squash match against British Bulldog and the Mean Street Posse, as after already interviewing DX and McMahon as the main suspects. Raw's top of the hour quarter saw Rock making his first appearance on the night, being questioned by the cops, revealing that it was Rock's rental car that ran over Austin last night, before responding by cutting a trademark promo to bump the segment over 500,000 viewers to a 6.4 rating. Nitro continued the tournament matches with another 2 in the quarter, first with the finish of Brett vs. Kidman, with the Outsiders coming out to subtly distract Kidman by pretending to go after Brett, and the continuation of the long-term storyline over the next month on the way to the Starrcade pay-per-view, followed by Buff Bagwell vs. Jeff Jarrett, with Jarrett advancing after Russo sent a referee in creative control for the finish to bring out Dustin Rhodes for the save. Next on Raw was Road Dogg vs. Al Snow, going 4 minutes, with the post-match segment seeing Mick Foley coming out to consult Snow after losing the match, singing a song and telling him that they're going to a vacation in Vegas, with footage set to air on SmackDown Thursday, continuing to play off the publicity the Snow doll being banned from major markets due to the separate head figure coming with it, with the hype of the doll being taken off the shelves leading to it selling faster than usual, including being overpriced on eBay as a collector's item. Raw also had a major injury angle coming up in the quarter, with Jericho kidnapping Chyna and breaking her hand with several hammer shots. While Nitro had a Revolution vs Filthy Animals House of Pain cage match, Raw had Test vs Billy Gunn going 5 minutes, along with a follow-up interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger after his appearance on SmackDown last Thursday, with the hyped show matching expectations, drawing a record 5.1 rating and over 7.8 million viewers, by far the most watched SmackDown to date, which on the back of the huge viewership resulted in Thursday, November 11th being the most watched wrestling night of the week for the first time, with over 10 million viewers between SmackDown and Thunder. Both shows had a similar format to open the final quarter, with two top matches saved for the main event segment, first with Nitro having their final tournament match between Sting and Luger after a show-long angle of Luger trying to get Sting out of the match, going 4 minutes, with Sting going over after Meng's interference to officially book the two semi-finals for the Mayhem pay-per-view as Sting vs Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett vs Chris Benoit, to set up two Canadians for the title in front of what is expected to be a hot hometown crowd at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, with Nitro's final quarter, which also included the entrances and start of Nash vs Seed, jumping over 400,000 viewers to a 3 rating. Going head-to-head against Sting vs Luger, Raw had Triple H vs Kane with Vince on commentary to continue the build to the Vince vs Hunter match, as with Austin now out of the picture for the foreseeable future and the planned WrestleMania 16 main event against Rock delayed for the next year. Triple H is said to be the biggest beneficiary from the vacant spot at the top of the card, with Vince McMahon, who previously didn't consider Hunter a future top headliner, now committed to pushing him to fill the void, along with Foley delaying his planned retirement in December to continue to work for a few more months. Kane vs Triple H went 5 minutes, ending up with a Vince-Hunter brawl, with the final quarter similar to Nitro, opening with the first of the top 2 matches and the main event crossing into the overrun, featuring the entrances and start of the Rock vs Bossman match. Going against strong competition on Raw, WCW's Overrun dropped to a 2.8 rating, with Nash vs Seed in a street fight going 8 minutes in the go-home segment for the Mayhem pay-per-view on Sunday, ending up with Scott Hall interfering for the DQ finish before Goldberg made a run into double spear the Outsiders and set up the final Goldberg-Seed build-up for the I Quit match along with Bret Hart to close the show. At the same time, Rock vs Bossman went 5 minutes in a wild hardcore match for the #1 contender for the WWF title, with Rock having the match won until Albert's interference to set up a surprise finish with Bossman going over, followed by a post-match segment with Rock going crazy, beating down both along with security and referees to close the show, with the Rock Bossman main event jumping over 600,000 viewers to a 6.4 rating, as Raw got a massive boost coming off Survivor Series to draw its highest rating in almost 2 months with a 6.2. Exactly 2 years since Montreal at Survivor Series 97, Bret Hart walked out of Canada with a world title belt again after beating Chris Benoit in the final of the Mayhem pay-per-view in front of an hometown crowd in Toronto, saying that it's been a long 2 years and he's gonna be the best champion WCW has ever had, while setting up the Starrcade main event with him challenging Goldberg for a title match at the event, before being confronted by the Outsiders with Hall mocking Bret's speech, telling him that nobody gets to the top in WCW before they go through them, as they're the ones who took the company to the top of the business, followed by Nash challenging Bret and Goldberg for a tag match in the main event, with Bret agreeing before being attacked by Jeff Jarrett to set up the top 2 matches for later tonight. After announcing the Outsiders Goldberg tag match, Bret Hart challenged Jeff Jarrett for a match promoted to start at the top of the hour when Raw goes on the air, with Goldberg instead hyping a mystery partner to be revealed in the main event, with 3 more angles during the first hour, seeing Lex Luger asking Russo to book Liz in a match against Meng and her locking herself in a cage, Kidman seeing Eddie and Tori in the locker room to set up an in-house Filthy Animals match, and Fit Finlay returning during a Norman Smiley Hardcore Open challenge after months out with a career-threatening leg injury. After being covered in high-profile publications like Entertainment Weekly since the jump to WCW, Vince Russo did another high-profile interview during the week with the New York Times, talking about what the audience want to see since the explosion of the boom period, with personality and storylines being the key to the peaking viewership along with an aggressive reality-based product, and how him and Ferraro write for each character based on realism, while also commenting on the backlash from parts of the audience for the Oklahoma JR parody last Monday, saying that it's only done for entertainment, and the Oklahoma segment was the highest rated quarter on the show last week. Hart and Jarrett made their entrances seconds after 9 p.m. to open the crossover segment with the title match along with the hook of a mystery man in the limousine, going 9 minutes with Bret retaining after Dustin Rhodes' interference to open Nitro stronger than usual, maintaining almost the entire unopposed audience with a 3.5 rating against Raw's 4.8, the closest opening margin since July. After a show-long angle 4 days ago on SmackDown that saw DX attacking the McMahons to end with Triple H luring Vince to the ring and attacking Shane Test and Stephanie, Raw opened with Shane Patterson and Briscoe looking for Vince all over the building, with Raw starting with a tag match of Mankind and Snow against the Hollies, with Bob Holly bringing the Snow action figure that was banned from all major markets due to the separate head saying that he hurt his merchandise sales, with DX shown inside a limousine on the way to the Marine Midland Arena in Buffalo, with Vince found in a car outside waiting for their arrival. After starting stronger than usual with the Hart vs. Jarrett match, Nitro saw a massive turnover of viewers to Raw, with the show dropping from a quarter-high 3.5 rating to a show low 2.7, featuring the Eddie vs. Kidman match set up earlier going 5 minutes with the possible split of the Filthy Animals, with Raw going in the opposite direction after opening lower than usual, jumping big with over 1.3 million viewers to a 5.9 rating. As in his second week on Raw, Kurt Angle in a match against Mark Henry built as the Battle of the Olympians, with both part of the '96 event, was again involved in the joint highest rated quarter, followed by one of the big angles of the night right after it, with Vince McMahon smashing the DX limousine when arriving to the building in the parking lot, before going after them to the locker room to start Raw's main show long angle. WCW rebounded from the show low rating, jumping over 700,000 viewers back to a 3.3 rating for the Luger-booked Liz vs. May match, carrying Liz on a forklift to the ring before Sting made the save along with a Disco vs. LaRue match in the same quarter, while Raw had two matches in the next 15 minutes, first with Jericho vs. Godfather and then Edge and Christian against the Dudleys. While in the middle, Vince was arrested for the car attack before being attacked by Triple H on the way to the police station. Meanwhile, with Vince pushing Hunter to fill the void and Foley delaying his retirement for a few more months, reports came out on Steve Austin getting several tests on his neck to end any hope of him working the planned WrestleMania 16 main event as a heel against Rock, with his future in-ring career in general in question. Nitro stayed steady with a 3.3 rating to close out the first opposed hour, with a Nitro Girls match along with Curt Hennig coming out for a farewell promo after being forced to retire by the powers that be, with him losing to Bagwell last night, while at the same time Raw jumped back to a peak 5.9 rating, which ended up the most watched quarter of the night, starting with the promoted Rock interview being interrupted by Foley and Snow, with Rock revealing that he didn't throw Foley's book in the garbage before cutting a promo on Snow to set up the return of the Rock and Sock connection, along with Vince getting into the Buffalo police station and a Jeff Hardy vs. X-Pac match. One of the most talked about segments of the night opened Nitro's third hour, as after hyping who was in the limousine for the past hour, Roddy Piper made his TV return, cutting a promo on the new creative team saying that WCW don't need writers, talking about the younger wrestlers complaining to him before his microphone cut off by the powers that be, leading to him walking backstage to set up a Piper-Russo confrontation, with Piper asking Russo if he's the one ruining the business he made in the last 30 years, telling Russo that he can take him down and can't be pushed around as he doesn't need the job, with Russo responding telling Piper that he might have a few B movies to his credit but he's pushing 50 with one hip and should go join Flair and Hogan in the retirement home in Florida, closing the segment with Piper telling Russo that he still has a 2-year contract and Russo making him a referee, with the Piper-Russo segment jumping to over a 3.5 rating in the most watched quarter of the night. Raw's top of the hour quarter opened with a different formatting than usual, with two skits, first with Mae Young getting drunk and Stephanie's wedding party, and Vince taking a mugshot at the police station, followed by Big Show coming out for a WWF title open challenge, ending up with Kane taking it with the Show vs. Kane title match going 3 minutes until Viscera's interference to open the second hour with a 5.6 rating. After retiring less than an hour earlier, Curt Hennig returned to the ring during a Booker vs. Bagwell match to turn heel and join the powers that be alongside Creative Control. With WCW's Mayhem pay-per-view coming from the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, the WWF countered it by booking a house show in the same city a day earlier, with WCW drawing 14,000 people to the building, while the WWF for the live event headlined by a Rock vs. Bossman match, drawing nearly 20,000 people for the Toronto Sky Dome. Triple H was out next on Raw saying that McMahon's car attack earlier proved that he ran over Austin while challenging him again for a match at the Armageddon pay-per-view, bringing out Shane to officially set it up after getting a phone call from Vince in jail, while booking Hunter in a handicap match against the Acolytes to start a brawl, with the segment bumping Raw back to a 5.9 rating. Nitro had a Benoit vs Malenko flag match next, with the unique dynamic of babyface Benoit fighting for the Canadian flag in front of the American audience, ending with Bret interfering and raising both flags to turn the crowd. With the WWF sponsors issues catching fire in the last few weeks, with the company's return to network television with SmackDown due to the PTC organization trying to censor the product, noting that millions of kids watch the two main WWF shows on a weekly basis, which led to major advertisers like Coca-Cola pulling out. JR during the Too Cool vs Bulldog and Vinny's tag match, which saw Rikishi making his TV return in a new character to officially start the new Too Cool run, acknowledged the situation on air, telling viewers to send letters to the companies in support of the WWF against the desperate attempt by the council to censor the content. WCW opened its final quarter with a Sting vs Meng no DQ match going 3 minutes, ending with Meng going over after Luger's interference, with the Outsiders vs Goldberg tag entrances taking place minutes later at 10:53 p.m., revealing Goldberg's partner to be Seed after they closed out their program last night in an I Quit match, starting the match crossing into the overrun, with the quarter climbing over 500,000 viewers to a 3.4 rating. Bossman and Albert open draws final quarter, followed by Rock with no mystery partner, saying that as usual he teams up with the people, going 3 minutes in a handicap match before Mankind walked out for the save for the Rock and Sock Connection reunion, with plans changing after the last 2 weeks, with Rock being occupied with side programs until the Royal Rumble pay-per-view to start the build-up to WrestleMania, and Mick Foley continuing his run as a babyface after at one point the plan was for Foley to turn heel on Rock to set up his retirement match, followed by Vince being released from jail in time to get back to the building, with the Triple H handicap match coming up next, crossing over 11 p.m. Nitro went 6 minutes in the overrun for the majority of the Goldberg and Seed vs Outsiders tag match, bumping the show over 1.1 million viewers in total to a 4 rating, Nitro's highest rated main event in almost 3 months, while at the same time taking Raw down from a 5.2 to a 4.7 in the direct turnover of viewers, resulting in almost a half rating point difference, with a 4 to 4.7 rating gap between the shows, the closest margin since the WWF pulled away in April '99, with Nitro overall jumping to its second highest rating in months with a 3.4. Raw's Triple H vs Acolytes handicap match going against the Big Star Power WCW tag saw the overrun dropping to a show low 4.7 rating, resulting in it being the lowest rated main event on a Raw broadcast in over a year, ending up with Vince returning to throw Hunter off the stage to a big reaction in the build-up to their pay-per-view match.
This past Monday, we had Nash and Goldberg up and down. I mean, we had a pay-per-view card, okay? It was up against a wedding. The whole show on Raw was based around a wedding.
With Raw about to go on the air in an hour for one of its most promoted shows in months, WCW, in an attempt to counter the hype, announced a loaded Star Power card from the start, building Nitro on a triple main event involving all its major players, starting with Bill Goldberg coming to the ring to call out the Outsiders in the build to the first main event, with the third Goldberg vs Nash match set for later tonight, bringing out Hall and Nash to mock Goldberg after Hall laid him out with a chair shot last Monday. closing the segment in a four-way brawl with Seed walking out saying that there's a new babyface in town, with Hall vs. Seed set to open the crossover quarter at 9 p.m. in less than an hour. Two weeks after the Oklahoma character debuted on the air, Jim Ross responded publicly for the first time during the week, saying that he heard about the parody but is not planning on watching it, talking about his previous relationship with Russo and Ferraro while they were in the company, saying that he thought they would be more considerate given that they were there the last time he got sick in December, while talking about Russo's opinion of him professionally, saying that while Russo told people that he wanted JR back on the air, he always thought that Russo would like to see him disappear from the television product. Russo, when commenting on if the parody skits were personal shots at JR, said that it was always about entertainment and JR was walking around with a cowboy hat in real life and taking himself more seriously than anyone he has ever seen, which was the idea for a comedic character, while criticizing JR for his other role as head of talent relations, saying that he asked for more talent for months due to the addition of SmackDown and all JR cared about was getting his air time on TV. Nitro's angles in the first hour included Russo booking Piper to be the referee in a mud wrestling match, Vito and Johnny taking Mean Gene to the club before getting to Disco, and Hall and Nash having a backstage interview with the interviewer for the night, Chavo, with Hall saying that he's carrying around the TV title when the belt is useless, ending up with Nash throwing it in the trash to write off the title, with the Revolution group coming out for a promo a few minutes from 9 p.m. cutting a promo on the American crowd for cheering Canadians like Hart and Benoit over them, with this segment crossing over the top of the hour to bring out Jim Duggan for a brawl. After the Revolution segment, Nitro took a commercial break in bad timing with Raw already on the air, followed by Scott Hall vs. Seed in the first of the hyped card of matches, going 3 minutes with Hall going over after interferences from Jarrett and Goldberg. As with interest picking up on Raw, Nitro started with its lowest opening quarter in the Russo-Ferraro era to date, doing a 2.7 rating. With this segment announced months in advance, along with it already being a hyped Raw with the first ever show from the new Staples Center in LA, the WWF heavily promoted Raw on November 29 throughout the week, targeting an additional audience on the night for the traditionally big drawing wedding angle set for the main event segment later tonight, with the show opening with the Show and Kane vs. Bossman and Viscera tag match, followed by DX coming out for a promo, with Triple H showing footage of Vince's car attack last week, saying that they have a 50-feet restraining order against him, while promising that there would not be a wedding tonight, with Raw opening big already in the 6 rating range in its highest opening quarter in over a month. Nitro's second quarter saw another Piper-Russo confrontation, along with a Steve Williams vs. Jerry of the Misfits in a cage match with Oklahoma on commentary, dropping to a shallow 2.5 rating, while Raw picked up the viewership, jumping over 500,000 viewers to a 6.5 rating for Vince McMahon coming out to confront DX, mocking them for their order of protection against him while hyping the Vince vs. Hunter pay-per-view match, announcing the top 2 matches for tonight, with Test getting a wedding present in a match against Hunter, and Rock and Mankind teaming up against the 3 other members of DX, closing the segment warning that anyone who gets involved in the ceremony later will get fired on the spot tonight. Nitro entered the 3 rating range for the first time on the night between 9:30 to 45 for the second promoted main event, with Bret Hart defending the WCW title against Meng after going over Sting and Luger in singles matches over the past few weeks, going 7 minutes to jump over 700,000 viewers to a peak 3 rating, ending up with the continuation of the subtle hints of the swerve to come at Starrcade, with Hall and Nash interfering to go after Bret while accidentally helping him retain the belt. With one of Russo's trademarks being giving everyone on the roster from top to bottom a storyline on television, one of his WWF favorites in D'Lo Brown led to a back and forth between the companies, with rumors of him jumping with Russo, starting first on the company hotline with Mark Madden reporting that D'Lo is about to leave the WWF for WCW, leading to Head of Talent Relations JR responding to the claim on the company website saying that D'Lo isn't leaving as he still has a year and a half left on his contract, with Madden responding a few days later saying that JR told half the truth as Brown has a clause in his contract which would allow him to leave before extending for another year in January 2000. At the same time, another major name was rumored to go in the opposite direction, with Dallas Page jumping to the WWF, including Page visiting the roster while both companies were in Toronto last Sunday during the WWF house show in the Sky Dome, with him reportedly having a conversation with Paul White, who introduced him to Rock to tease a potential People's Champs match in the future. Nitro closed out the first hour having a 3-way for the #1 contender for the WCW title after the Bret vs. Goldberg match at Starrcade, with Sting, Jarrett and Benoit going 4 minutes, with Benoit going over after Dustin Rhodes' interference, while Raw had a Too Cool vs. Holly's tag match along with the entrances of the Test Triple H match coming up next, closing the first opposed hour with a 6.3 to 2.8 rating margin. The third and biggest hyped main event opened Nitro's third hour, with Goldberg vs. Nash about to take place before Hall went after Goldberg during his entrance to lead to another Outsiders Goldberg and Seed brawl backstage on the way to the ring, eventually starting the match built as the third and decisive Goldberg vs. Nash match, with both having one win over each other, ending up with Goldberg going over, with the unusual viewership pattern on the night continuing due to the increased interest on Raw, as what would have normally guaranteed a major viewership bump in the Goldberg-Nash match along with the Piper Mud Wrestling segment in the same quarter, stayed the same as the previous quarter with a 2.8 rating. Raw's top of the hour quarter with the Test vs. Triple H match along with the intrigue of Vince McMahon as special referee behind the Vince mask to get around the restraining order, jumped over 800,000 viewers to a quarter-high 6.9 rating, going 8 minutes, with Test going over an hour before the wedding after Shane's interference. After doing several tests in the past week, Steve Austin was set to undergo spinal surgery that will give him a chance of a return to the ring, with JR acknowledging in his weekly report that Austin's in-ring activities are in danger if not responding well to recovery after it, while at the same time with Austin off for the foreseeable future and Taker out for months. Mick Foley appeared on TSN's Off the Record, with the host publicly announcing that Foley might have announced his retirement by the time the interview airs, which was delayed due to the Austin news, with Foley attempting to work through the start of the year to give the company time to plan ahead, as with Vince McMahon about to be with 3 out of its top 4 stars off television in the near future. The big story of the week saw a list of high-profile sponsors pulling out due to media pressure, with perhaps the highest profile being Coca-Cola, leading to Vince responding in a letter saying that the PTC is not a council but a fictitious organization, while criticizing Coke for pulling out, saying that their decision is discriminatory and hypocritical as they continue to advertise on other similar edgy programs. with the idea for the near future being to tone down SmackDown on network television while Raw remains the same on cable. With Al Snow trying to convince Foley to pick him as the Rock and Sock partner in a six-man tag against DX coming up, Rock entered the frame completely ignoring Snow while cutting a promo on him to Foley in a comedic segment to continue the build to an eventual Rock vs. Snow match in another mini-program for Rock on the way to the Royal Rumble, followed by the DX team of Road Dogg Gunn and X-Pac against Rock, Mankind and Kane as the mystery partner, with the building erupting for Rock's entrance and his debut in the arena in one of the biggest ovations the Staples Center has seen to date, going 4 minutes with Rock having the match won until Snow interfered for the DQ finish, jumping over 500,000 viewers to a 6.8 rating. Nitro's final quarter opened with the payoff of the Vito Johnny skits with Disco and Lash setting them up to cover them with spaghetti sauce in the apartment, with the Luger Sting angle for the third week in a row being placed in the same time slot as a lead into the main event with Luger as promised to Russo earlier throwing Liz in the mud, before Sting came out from behind to throw Luger in a $3,000 suit, with the three-team of Hall and Nash, Brett and Benoit and Goldberg and Cena along with Piper as the special referee making their entrances 5 minutes from the top of the hour to pick up the final quarter over 500,000 viewers to a joint show high 3 rating. At the same time, Raw had one of its most unusual final quarters with the majority of the segment seeing the payoff of the Acolyte Studley's poker game to end in a wild brawl and a series of backstage skits to set up the wedding segment coming up, having the family introduction along with the Test Stephanie and Vince entrances. Nitro's three-way tag cage match saw WCW loading up the overrun segment with massive star power all in the ring at the same time to counter-program Raw's wedding angle head-to-head, while like Raw taking a longer overrun than usual going 8 minutes past the top of the hour, but with mega hype job for the Raw angle. Nitro's overrun still dropped to a 2.7 rating from the final quarter, ending up with Chris Benoit pinning Scott Hall after a diving headbutt from the top of the cage to finish with Hall, Nash and Jarrett teaming up for a post-match beatdown to close the show. The wedding ceremony segment started already past 11 p.m. with Triple H interrupting a few minutes in, saying that while Vince told him that anyone who's not a family member or invited is allowed to get involved, he should watch the footage on screen, introducing the video of Hunter driving Stephanie around Vegas to a wedding chapel to reveal that they got married, with this segment going the longest Raw has went past the top of the hour since the move to the 2 hours 9 to 11 p.m. time slot, going off the air at 11:13 p.m. gaining over 1.2 million viewers including the last 5 minutes of the segment unopposed to a peak 7.3 rating and over 8.6 million viewers, with Raw jumping big to its highest rating since September 27 with a 6.5 overall.